Have you ever prayed for something and then waited and waited and waited? Days pass, weeks pass, sometimes even years pass, yet nothing seems to change. You prayed sincerely. You trusted God. You believed He was listening. But the answer never came the way you expected. And slowly, a quiet question begins to form in your heart. God, why are you taking so long? For many believers, waiting is one of the most difficult parts of faith, because prayer often comes with hope. Hope that God will move quickly. Hope that God will solve the problem. Hope that the answer will come soon. But sometimes the answer feels delayed. And when that happens, many people begin to wonder if something is wrong. Maybe God is disappointed. Maybe God is ignoring the prayer. Maybe the faith was not strong enough. Or maybe God is silent. These thoughts can become heavy, especially when the situation is painful. You may be praying for healing, praying for direction, praying for a relationship, praying for peace in your heart. And yet the situation remains the same. Nothing changes, at least nothing that you can see. And that is where the real struggle begins, because waiting tests something very deep inside us. Waiting tests our trust. Faith feels easier when answers come quickly. Faith feels natural when prayers are answered immediately. But when heaven seems quiet, faith enters a different season, a deeper season. A season where trust must grow stronger than feelings. And this kind of waiting is not new. Believers throughout history have walked through the same experience. People we admire, people whose faith changed the world. Even they experienced long seasons of waiting. One of the most powerful examples of waiting in the Bible comes from the life of Abraham. Abraham received an incredible promise from God. God told him something that seemed almost impossible. You will become the father of a great nation. That promise sounded amazing, but there was a problem. Abraham and his wife Sarah were old, very old, and they had no children, yet God promised that Abraham would have a son. Imagine hearing that promise. Imagine believing that God Himself spoke it. Now imagine waiting for it to happen. At first, Abraham probably expected the promise to happen quickly, perhaps within months, perhaps within a year, but that is not what happened. 1 year passed, then 5 years passed, then 10 years passed. Still no son, still no answer, still waiting. Imagine what Abraham must have felt. Every year that passed made the promise seem more impossible. Every year made the waiting heavier. Yet something remarkable happened. Abraham continued trusting God, even when the promise seemed delayed, even when the situation looked impossible. Abraham continued believing. And finally, after 25 years, the promise came. Isaac was born. The waiting was long. The waiting was difficult, but the promise was not forgotten. God had not ignored Abraham. God had not abandoned His word. God was working through the waiting, preparing something greater than Abraham could see. And that story reveals something powerful about the nature of God. God's timing is rarely the same as our timing. When believers experience delayed answers to prayer, the question naturally appears: why? Why would a loving God allow us to wait? Why would God delay something good? The Bible reveals that waiting often has a purpose. And there are 3 powerful reasons why God sometimes allows seasons of waiting. The first reason is this: God is preparing you. Sometimes the answer to your prayer requires a different version of you, a stronger version, a wiser version, a more mature version. Waiting shapes the heart. It develops patience. It develops humility. It develops trust. Without waiting, those qualities would remain weak. Just as muscles grow through resistance, faith grows through waiting. The second reason is this: God is preparing the situation. Many times we see only a small part of the story, but God sees everything. He sees the future. He sees the people involved. He sees the timing of events that have not happened yet. What feels like delay to us may actually be perfect preparation from God's perspective. And the third reason is this: God is strengthening your trust. Faith that depends only on quick answers remains fragile, but faith that learns to trust God during silence becomes unshakable. And that kind of faith carries a person through the deepest storms of life. Charles Spurgeon, one of the greatest preachers in Christian history, understood this deeply. Thousands gathered every week to hear him preach. His sermons spread across the world. But what many people do not realize is that Spurgeon also experienced seasons of deep struggle. There were times when his heart felt heavy, times when prayer felt difficult, times when answers seemed delayed. Spurgeon once wrote something very powerful: God is too wise to be mistaken, and too good to be unkind. That sentence carries deep truths. When we cannot understand God's timing, we must trust His character. Because God's goodness does not change when circumstances feel confusing. God's faithfulness does not disappear when answers take time. And sometimes, the waiting season becomes the very place where faith grows strongest. Spurgeon also said something that has encouraged believers for generations: when you cannot trace God's hand, trust His heart. In other words, even when you cannot see what God is doing, you can still trust who He is. One of the greatest fears believers experience during waiting seasons is the fear that time is being wasted. But the Bible reveals something different. Waiting with God is never wasted. During waiting seasons, God often works beneath the surface, just like roots growing beneath the soil. When a tree begins to grow, most of its development happens underground. The roots stretch deeper. The foundation becomes stronger. And that invisible growth determines how strong the tree will become later. Faith works the same way. Some seasons of life feel visible and exciting, but other seasons are quiet, invisible, hidden. And those quiet seasons often produce the deepest growth. God may be strengthening your character, deepening your patience, teaching you trust, preparing your heart for something greater. Even when you cannot see it, if you are in a season where your prayers feel unanswered, there are 3 important things to remember. First, keep praying. Many people stop praying when answers take too long. But prayer is not only about receiving answers. Prayer is also about relationship. It is about remaining connected to God, even during silence. Second, stay faithful in the small things. Faith grows through daily obedience. Reading Scripture, choosing kindness, trusting God in ordinary moments. Those quiet acts of faith build a strong spiritual foundation. And third, remember God's promises. Scripture reminds us again and again that God is faithful. Hebrews 10:23 says, "Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for He who promised is faithful." Notice that the verse does not say that timing will always be easy, but it promises that God Himself is faithful. And that truth becomes an anchor during seasons of waiting. Something remarkable often happens after a long season of waiting. The answer eventually arrives. But when it arrives, the person who receives it is no longer the same. Waiting changes you. It deepens your trust. It strengthens your character. It teaches patience. And when the answer finally comes, it often feels even more meaningful. because you understand the journey that led to it. Many believers discover something surprising. Looking back, they realize that God's timing was not late. It was perfect. The waiting prepared them. The waiting shaped them. The waiting strengthened them. And without that preparation, the blessing might have arrived too early. If you are in a season of waiting today, hear this clearly. God has not forgotten you. Your prayers are not ignored. Your faith is not wasted. Even when heaven seems quiet, God is still working. He may be preparing something you cannot yet see. He may be shaping your heart. He may be aligning circumstances in ways that will only make sense later. But one thing remains certain. God is faithful, and His promises never fail. So keep praying, keep trusting, keep believing. Because sometimes the longest waiting seasons produce the greatest miracles. If this message encouraged you today, take a moment to subscribe to Faith Over Feelings. This channel exists to remind believers that faith is not built on emotions. Faith is built on truth. Like this video, so more people struggling with unanswered prayers can find encouragement. Share it with someone who may be waiting for an answer from God. And remember this, even when the answer feels delayed, God is never late. Trust Him, because His timing is always perfect.